Bismillah. Wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Sisters Unfiltered. This is our podcast style show. As you know, this is the space for honest conversations amongst Muslim women on a variety of topical issues. So if you are interested in real talk, open debate, and unfiltered conversation, this is the place to be. Now, this episode signals the first of 4 special marriage sessions. Yes, ladies, we are here to talk about marriage. So I am joined firstly by Naima Isa, then Khalila Lister, and Rosie Talha. Assalamu alaikum, ladies. Okay, so before we even talk about today's topic, which is preparing for marriage, let's set the scene. Everyone says there's a marriage crisis, okay? Whether it's people trying to get married and failing, or trying to stay married and failing, it seems that the consensus is there is a crisis within the ummah and without. So these 4 sessions are for us to have some real talk. I'm hoping, inshallah, that these conversations will be thought-provoking, will be surprising, maybe even for the readers, and will encapsulate the best of our own experience and knowledge, inshallah, to be able to share with our wonderful viewers out there. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to say it as it is, you're going to put it on the table, inshallah. So my first question, since today's episode is all about preparing for marriage, how prepared were you for marriage when you got married?
Alhamdulillah, I think when I started thinking about marriage, it was from the age of 18, because I started practicing around 19. I used to sit with a lot of married sisters, and I used to hear about their marital life, and that was kind of giving me an insight into what it would be like to be married. But of course, I didn't just depend on that. I was reading books like How to Be the Righteous Wife and, all those books. And actually, it created a bit of a mindset that, when I'm married, things are going to be different. And that was a good mindset to develop. And of course, I come from a very traditional Bengali Muslim family. So therefore, marriage is very much talked about, discussed, and going to different weddings. I mean, our families used to get invited to many, many weddings. We saw how things were done. So marriage was always in the back of their head. And I think when I started practicing, it gave me a sense of urgency to want to get married, because that kind of opened the possibility of having my own family, having freedom to travel. Because obviously, I grew up in a household where my father passed away very young. So I didn't have a mahram to take us here, take us there. So I thought being married would be wonderful. It would be just opening doors of opportunities. And alhamdulillah, I think having that mindset helped me to kind of prepare myself to the best of my ability. Meaning reading books, speaking to family, friends, sitting with a lot of married sisters was really, what can I say? It was life-changing, because they gave me an insight and they gave me a realistic attitude to having a marital life.
Was it a good insight?
It was very good.
It was a positive insight.
Yeah, because they would talk about how, oh my God, there's just day-to-day issues. Oh, I need to go and cook for my husband. So I was thinking, okay, this is what you have to do. Obviously, getting married is another ballgame altogether. The reality is quite different, because everyone's household is different.
But we had a conversation once, Rosie, I don't remember if you remember, but how awkward we found it. I got married just soon after yourself, and we had this conversation where we were sitting amongst the sisters, and we were saying we found it really awkward to seek permission.
I think, I remember that conversation. I have that conversation with a lot of young girls, because obviously when I do workshop about preparing for marriage, is that we live in a society where we don't really ask for permission from our fathers, from our brothers, because we just kind of get up and go. I grew up like that, because I didn't have a father figure. So when I got married, I would dance around that question. I would say to my husband, sisters are getting together. And he'd be like, and? I said, I'm expected to go. And he'd be like, yes. And then I found that quite hard, because I didn't grow up in a household where I had to ask my father, can I go? It's just like, we would announce to my mom, we're going, we're gone. So I think that, had to be learnt, you had to train yourself, which is a good thing, because then you can say, can you pick me up afterwards, because you get your
that's the plan. Okay, mashallah. So what about you guys? Did you feel that you were prepared when you got married?
You want to go? Go. Okay, so mine is obviously from a different stance, being a revert. I've been married twice, so I'll talk about the first one first, and I'll get to the marriage after divorce later. But the first marriage for me as a revert, I was a new revert, and automatically the pressure comes in. When are you getting married? It was every single way. I was 19, and the pressure was on. So I got married before I turned 20, and I think I hadn't found myself. I hadn't developed who I was. Was I prepared? I did read those books as well. I read the books, but I hadn't even discovered who I was as a Muslim, let alone to be a wife. But the pressure was really, really there. And I think for me as well, because I was in an abusive marriage, my parents are together. They have a really good, my dad died in an marriage and he accepted Islam, alhamdulillah. But they had a good marriage. So again, I wasn't prepared for that toxicness that had come. And then I'm like, be patient. So I think there really needs to be a lot more education on actually what is not okay. The first person that ever said to me what was going on in my marriage was not okay was after 7 years, and it was a sister. And she was like, Khalila, you do not have to be patient in this. Everyone else was like, be patient.
So they knew the full situation.
I had gone to people, I had gone to imams, I had gone, and I think that is lack of preparation of understanding where to draw a line. And I'm not trying to just be negative, by the way.
Can I just say, you know what, there's a difference between being patient and being practical. When there's abuse and there's other stuff, because you have to think about what the children, if there are children in the scene, what they experience and what their future is going to be like. You know, and I think it's very, very important that everyone make a choice based on what they're going through and think about the consequences that they will live with, you know, and sometimes you just have to make, I'm not advocating anything, but I'm just saying whatever situation you're in, you have to look at, okay, what is the consequences, and you have to bite the bullet and make those, you know, choices, even if that choice is like, okay, you know what, I'm ready, I want to get married, because some girls, they find it very difficult to have this conversation with their family, but I say to them, have it. If you're ready and you want to get married, have this conversation. Polar opposite, if you feel like you can't cope with this, you know, situation or marriage, again, have conversation with your loved ones, because they will be the best people to guide you or to support you.
And not necessarily there's no way I could have gone to my loved ones.
But you know, that's another thing. Some people say going to your loved ones in difficult situations, and I know this is going a little bit staring off from preparing, but sometimes they do say, if you have, and this advice was given at an event just yesterday, where they were saying that if you have a situation, if you can resolve it within yourself or with people that are not completely family, because you may be able to resolve that situation, but the family is going to hold on to it.
Can I just say, I think with regards to like speaking to family, sorry.
When I say loved ones, that doesn't necessarily mean family. You could have friends who are loved ones. You could have, you know, people who are your neighbors, and they've got a very loving relationship. So automatically, you shouldn't think, it's just a family.
Sorry, just finishing the point that you have to draw a line between what is a conflict and what is oppression.
And I think that conflict versus oppression, or that distinction, is actually not something that the Muslim community has made clear.
It's not talked about.
And it's not something that women should know, or men should know. All Muslims should understand. This is acceptable, this is not acceptable. And I think as I'm hearing you guys talk, I'm thinking, okay, that's all well and good. But when you are a new wife, especially if you're young, especially if you're a new revert, you are vulnerable. That's the fact of it, right? You are vulnerable. And whatever your husband thinks is acceptable is going to be your life. So if he says, you're not leaving the house without me, that's your life, right? If he says, I don't want you to see your family, that becomes your life. So how does that young person or that new Muslim actually pipe up and say, hold on, is that okay? Islamically, are you allowed to do that? Like, you know, don't I have any, like a recourse?
Sometimes there's growth in this as well. Back in the days, 20 odd years ago, we knew sisters were told, you can't leave the house unless I'm there with you. You can't drive without,
you can't pick up the phone.
You can't, but the brothers have learned, like, as they had I was influenced by some people, and, you know, I was wrong.
Right.
So sometimes you have to allow growth as well. You're not getting married to a finished article. You're getting married to a potential.
Or work in progress.
In progress. And we all are that.
My question is about, it's all well and good, but how are you going to advise that young girl or the young sister to say anything in that situation? Because the default setting is, well, that's what my husband said. That's what my husband wants.
It's actually funny because we're having this conversation. I just had a question last night, from a young person who's getting married, and she wanted to know, because she obviously, heard my lectures and things like that. She wanted to know from me that, is it okay? Because her husband's saying to her that, after marriage, you're not supposed to give priority to your own family, you're supposed to give priority to in-laws, Is
that Islamic?
Listen,
Okay. I'm just
I had to say to her, okay, let me ask few questions just to get the context, because it's very hard to advise online. So then she told me that she's engaged and she's going to live with the family for a temporary period, and then they're going to move out. So then I said to her, look, everyone has responsibility to their own family. However, after marriage, the reality changes, because obviously your priority is your spouse and you. And so the business of life may mean that you can't visit them often. However, this is something you both need to negotiate what is practical for you both.
Right.
So then I thought, okay, would she be satisfied? But alhamdulillah, she was satisfied, because she was understanding, is it an Islamic thing that, she just forgets about her own family and she adopts her,
that's now my family.
That's now my family. So I had to understand what's the context. So I think it's very important for anyone seeking marriage or business or whatever, that they actually do their own research and not blind flow, because there are always room for conversation, and you can't, and you shouldn't, and I will say that, because obviously I got married to a man who studied 6 years Sharia. Even with him, sometimes if you ask me something, I would say, but why? How? Not because, oh my God, he knows. No, because everyone has different ideas and understanding. And always I would encourage, have conversations. Have discussion, because with discussion you can change perspective, or you can persuade people, isn't it? And I think that's something that we need to put it out there.
I like the persuade one.
The persuading. So do I. But persuading assumes it's after marriage. So since we're talking about preparing, how can we help our daughters and our younger sisters to be able to have those conversations, to be confident enough and be grounded enough to be able to have those conversations before they get married?
One thing I would say, Naima, for all the young people who are looking to get married, is not to forget who they are. Because sometimes when they feel like, okay, they're getting married, they just ignore who they are, what their likes are, what their dislikes are. I remember I had a coaching session with one sister who was looking to get married, and she said, I want my husband to do what I like, and I want him to enjoy the interests that I like. So I asked her, what do you like? She said, actually, I don't know. And I said, how can you find somebody who likes what you like if you don't even know what you like?
Yeah, so important.
So it's very important that we know what is it that we like, what do we enjoy, what actually makes us tick, what is my passion? Because when you go with that, then the other person may not enjoy or share your passion, but he definitely will respect.
At least he can get to understand you a little bit better.
Exactly.
I have to say, I was on a podcast and this topic came up of, a woman's interests and passions and hobbies. And I have to say, the consensus from the brothers is, we don't really care. We don't really care. It's nice, I'm happy for you, but I will not choose a wife because she's a cross-country runner, if that makes sense. She's into watercolors. That's not what's going to draw me to her. That's not what's going to make me say she's the one.
But where's the chemistry?
It may make her say she's not the one. If she knows herself and she knows what she likes and she knows what she doesn't, and she's going to say, this is what I do, it allows the opportunity for him to be like, okay, that's not my vibe. That's not for me. And you learn that very early on.
Can I just come in with something? I actually don't think that it's that important about likes and dislikes.
To have the same ones?
I just feel that there's sisters who have got married to brothers who are very outdoorsy, very camping, and they're like, very prim and proper. And but they adapt, and they've learned, and it's like they've learned from one another. So that's one thing. And I know sisters who didn't know the offside rule and didn't know anything about football, but then now are just watching Match of the Day with their husbands, because that's marriage.
Learning from each other.
But
and
that's
growing.
one thing is. So I come a little bit differently from that. I do feel that the key thing that they should be is chemistry. And I think that you only get that from sitting with a person, not online and not through conversation. I think that there needs to be a presence where is there banter? Do we bounce off one another? And you can get that very quickly. Secondly, I don't think it's also about the do's and the wants, knowing yourself. but I think knowing yourself holistically, so you know yourself in your likes and your dislikes, but also knowing your weaknesses. And I think that that's for men and women, because what's your pastime, what's your goals, and also like negative things, because marriage isn't about all lovey-dovey. I love to say it's a bed of roses it's hard work.
It is a bed of roses. It smells good and it looks good, but it has thorns.
It has
twigs and it has leaves that will prick you.
Sometimes it rains and thunderstorms, you know.
It's hard work. And so when you want something and then suddenly you're not getting it, or you feel that you have an authority over you, or it could be that there's certain things that are upsetting you, but you have to stomach it or take it for the sake of Allah, or something maybe said, however you deal with it. It's about controlling your emotions as well.
That's the huge piece.
And this is,
but you know what? Sometimes it's easy to say controlling emotion, but sometimes things happen in marriage where you can't control your emotion.
Not control, but even manage it.
Yeah.
Like,
but we can't. That's life. You can't always manage. Like if your husband's like saying something to you and you're upset, and it's the month, the day of the month.
Don't cry.
Yeah, the thing is, what's really important, because obviously I hear it all,
Yeah.
What's really important is that. And actually, this was from a young girl who came to my marriage preparation workshop. She's only 18. She said to me, what's really important, to have same interest or same values? And I thought,
that's a good question.
That's a very good question.
This is good.
She was she came into my workshop with I'm not
sure
really.
she was 18?
She's 18 and she was just like, I'm not really convinced yet to be married.
Okay.
But by the end, she was convinced. Alhamdulillah. Not only that, she had a proposal as well. Alhamdulillah.
Okay.
Yeah. So she asked a very good question. She said to me, what's more important? Because we were talking about, like knowing yourself before you choose the compatible one.
Yeah.
So she said, what's important? Interest or values? And I thought that's a very good question, because sometimes we get so bogged down with the interest.
Yeah.
Like, do we have same likes and dislikes? To some extent, you should, because then it will bind you together. But, you don't have to have everything that he likes, and neither does he.
Yeah.
But values are very important. Why? Because values will bind you throughout the life. When you get married, living with the in-laws or not living with the in-laws, living abroad or here, having children. Because these values will bring you onto the same page. Because I have seen many marriages, they struggle. Every situation is like a battle because they have two different values.
Right.
That's really cool.
And that's very, very important.
I want to say something, bringing it back to like what the original thing is of preparing for marriage, right? And you said something that made me think of something, right? You said you can tell someone who they are very early on. Now, we live in a time where social media analyzes everything, and I am constantly reading things like people don't show you their true colors till 3 months in, and these are what our young girls.
Oh, but I don't know about knowing them. I mean about chemistry.
I know. But listen.
Okay.
She jumped off that point.
Don't hold
So we are continuously reading things like attraction types, and if you're
attachment types
as well. Attachment types. If you're someone that we're in a space where everyone is analyzing. These young kids are analyzing these things, that these red flags that were
narcissist, toxic,
right? And then it becomes it's everything, and they're so conditioned now to having realizations, which maybe is positive, and this is what I want to know from you. It is positive to be aware of things. But do we become too aware? And how long should the courting period be? Because a lot of brothers will be like, it's quick, get married, it's the sunnah, don't delay. And then we're still in a time where people really want to get to know each other and know the reality. Like, what would we advise our younger brothers?
Do you know what? One thing I'm really, really seeing more and more is that people have this notion on profile or online, and they basically conclude their decision based on that. That is really wrong. Why? Because you haven't even met the person. You don't even know what the person looks like. Not everyone's photogenic. Some people are very photogenic. When you see them in real life, you think, oh Allah, what happened? Yeah. Some people...
Catfish.
Yeah, catfish, yeah. I would really highly encourage is to have people on board with you, just like when we choose a degree or, like A-levels, which college to go to. We get our parents to come to the open evenings. Why? Because we want to make a decision that is the best decision. And, we have that in the deen. We have istishara and istikhara. Istishara, when you consult the people who are in your life. And I think that's not happening, because youngsters are looking at Instagram and think, oh yeah, he's got this, he's got that. Yeah, and this is really wrong, because who would want the best for you? Is your loved ones, and that doesn't just mean your family, your friends, your neighbors, your uncle, and I think having those people on board and going through the preparation and saying to them, this is what I want and this is what I don't want. Because don't forget, they have something that we don't have, and that is life experience.
True. Yeah.
Life experience is nothing like, seeing something online, Life experience gives people confidence with the decision that they make. And I think a lot of the youngsters, they are throwing that from the window. And, just thinking to myself, some of people ask me about marriage issues and things like that. I'm thinking to myself, don't they have elders in their family? Because a lot of them are from Asian background.
Yeah,
and there's always, elders, they have wisdom that youngsters don't have, because wisdom only comes about mostly with age.
I think that's something that's changed actually nowadays, is that, Talha, you're talking about the elders. I remember when we were getting married, our parents used to say, okay, you can invite 10, 15 of your friends. Now, it's like the kids are telling the parents,
you can invite 10, 15 of your friends.
Or who's that person? Where have they been for the past 15, 20 years? If they're so important to you, like we don't know them. We only want people that we know as well. We're not going to pay. Or there's a difference in even the mindset of approaching the marriage. It's the culture shifted, so I think there is a
more individualistic.
Definitely more individualistic.
Definitely less mashwara and seeking advice from the elders and trusting their judgment and their instinct.
Where I come from, Asian background, we have this thing called dekhadiki, means like meet and greet. So when you have
between the families,
you
give gifts as well.
Of course. But that's just subjective to different families.
Sure.
But the premise of the whole thing is that the groom and the bride is basically checked out by each other's family, as well as they check each other out. Because sometimes when you meet someone, when you go to interview panel, you have one person who's come for the interview, and then you have the panelist.
Right.
Everyone's seen different things, and they're marking. They have a consultation. Should we hire this person?
Right.
I'm just giving an example. Not that marriage is like an interview, but that. Meet and greet, what does it do? It provides an opportunity for the both families to meet, and the both the guy and the girl to meet, and also fall on their family for advice and shura. And that creates a holistic approach to, okay, is this person good for my daughter, my sister, so and so. So everyone's kind of like vetting. And that is necessary. Why? Because marriage is not like a day or two or a month. It's a lifetime, inshallah.
And it's two families.
This is it.
I was going to say, what do you do in the case of the revert?
That's what I was just going to say. It's a problem for the reverts, and I'll tell you why. I cannot go to my parents. My dad didn't have ghira of us, and my mom is I love them, but they're not someone I could go to for Islam. I was groomed for my second marriage by a wali. Like, I'll go into that maybe in another one, but who do you go to?
But then in that case, obviously, from a revert perspective, not every revert has same situation, just like born Muslim. Everyone's situation is different. I know of Muslim sisters, they didn't have many people to kind of, be there for them, but they had to kind of get people who are closest to them. So they had a bit of backup. So what I would really encourage is that sisters who come from revert background, to get their friends, to get people who are in their life on board. Why? It's like when you have backup, people will not mess around with you.
So that's what I say to the sisters in my class, sir, is that create a support network. So like my husband,
sisters from the halaqah, masjid sisters.
Because
in reality,
create your family.
In street world, what happens when you see somebody with 2, 3, 4 people? You think, I'm not gonna start the fight.
Can I just say something though, that one of the issues in terms of preparing as well is when a sister, if she is a revert, if she's speaking to a brother, tell him that I need you to meet my wali. And get the man involved. A man involved. From the beginning. And when they know that you have a man behind you and that you have people behind you who love and care for you for the sake of Allah, you are the sister, you are responsibility on that.
It's protection.
Because a lot of the reverts are getting played around, unfortunately. I don't. Go on.
On that note about bringing a man in, we are going to discuss this in our next episode. So please stay tuned for the very next one. What did you guys think? Let us know on social media. Did anything here push your buttons? Did anything here make you think? Did you hear anything you had not heard before? I hope so. If you're going to have a discussion about this. And thank you from me, Naima B.
Assalamu alaikum from Naima A.
Khalila, assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Talha.
From the whole team behind Sisters Unfiltered, Jazakallahu khairan for joining us. We will see you in the next episode, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.